Are you struggling to grow Java moss? Does it just turn brown and die? Are you frustrated by seeing others have success when the plant just won't grow for you? Well, in this video, I'm going to share with you my experiences of growing Java moss based on 30 years in the hobby. Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Richard and I'm a fish and shrimp keeper based in the UK. So Java moss has earned itself the accolade of being one of the most popular plants in the fish keeping hobby. It's loved by breeders, by aquascapers, or just by general hobbyists. And that's because on the whole, it's easy to grow, easy to propagate, easy to maintain, and just kind of does well for us. And that's all very well if you're one of the people that have success with Java moss. But if you're struggling, if you find every time you add Java moss to your aquarium, it just seems to turn brown, it just dies, it never really thrives, then in this video, hopefully I can help explain why it isn't doing well for you and tell you what you need to change to make it so this plant does grow well. So if everybody is saying Java moss is great for beginners and easy to grow, why are you struggling? Well, the first reason is typically the source of the Java moss. Now, Java moss, like so many of our aquarium plants, is equally happy growing underwater or above the surface on the land. The problem is, it doesn't do both at the same time. It's a slightly different plant. Now, for growers who are growing Java moss professionally to sell, it's much easier for them to grow it out of water in damp conditions. They don't have to deal with algae or snails or pests that might get into the aquarium of those who buy the moss. So they grow it out of the aquarium in damp conditions. The problem is, when you then buy that from your local store and take it home and put it in your aquarium, the Java moss has to transition to life in an underwater environment. What essentially happens is that lovely green moss that you put in the tank has to convert to life underwater. And in the process of converting, it goes through a phase of essentially being brown and looking dead. And for so many new hobbyists, they put their lovely clump of dark green Java moss in the tank. 2 or 3 weeks later, they notice it's just going brown, it's dying. The plant is dead, and what they do is they chuck it out and they go to the store and they buy some more. The store is more than happy to sell you more Java moss. In reality, in almost every situation, if you just leave that Java moss, you leave it, and I know it looks terrible having a clump of brown moss sitting in the corner of your tank. You're not exactly Takeshi Amano with this brown dead lump. But give it time and you will notice that it starts to sprout fresh green growth. It starts to regrow in its underwater form. And very quickly, once it has transitioned to life underwater, it will spread, it will grow, and you'll be well away. But it's going through that stage of having a clump of brown moss in your aquarium. It's putting up with that. Don't trim it, don't bin it, don't pick it apart, just leave it be, and it will convert from the initial lump of moss growing above the surface through the brown stage, and then it will become a green Java moss happy to live underwater. At that point, it's away. There's almost no stopping it. I'm no plant growing expert. I use Java moss in pretty much every single tank I have. Here, it's just thrown in this tank, which is about to get rescaped. I've got it in a quarantine tank. It's in with the pea puffers. It's pretty much everywhere because it grows so well. For a long time, my wife and I were breeding and selling shrimp. We were also selling Java moss. We had huge clumps of Java moss in each of our shrimp breeding tanks. It's essentially a miracle plant when it comes to breeding shrimp. So naturally, we were selling fistfuls of the stuff. We were selling it online, and we would just take a clump out, bag it up, send it, clump, bag it up, send it. We could have done that all day long. Once you get Java moss established to life underwater, there's almost no stopping it. So once your Java moss has transitioned to life underwater, or if you bought it from a local hobbyist or from an online retailer who grows their own Java moss, once you've got that Java moss that's happy living in the aquarium, what next? Well, the great thing is about Java moss is unlike a stem plant, it doesn't have to be planted in the gravel. Unlike a rhizome plant like Java fern, it doesn't have to be glued to hardscape. Java moss can be it just grows. You just put it in the aquarium. Yes, you can attach it to things. Many of the high-end aquascapers, these real talented guys, they will tie it to pieces of wood to create trees, or they will glue it to small pieces of stone to fit whatever aquascape it is they're building. But for the regular everyday folk like us, you can just add it to your aquarium. Now, sometimes I will place it on a small stone to hold it in one place. Sometimes I will tie it to a piece of wood just to keep it in one area. And given time, as the Java moss grows, it does attach itself. It does eventually stick, for want of a better word, to whatever it's growing on. but you don't have to. When we had it in breeding tanks, we just chucked it in as a clump. When I'm breeding fish and I want to have Java moss in there to aid the survival rate of the babies, I just throw it in. I just leave it as a free-form clump. Yes, if this were a display tank, it doesn't look very attractive. But in a quarantine tank, like up here, where I just wish to provide the fish with some cover so the fish doesn't feel exposed in an empty tank, chuck it in, give it some light, you really can't go wrong. So yes, you can weigh it down, you can attach it to things, but you don't have to. And on the subject of light, one of the great things about Java moss is essentially, give it light, it will grow. I don't use any high-end lights in these tanks here. They're just essentially LED lights from a local DIY store. Java moss doesn't care. Give it light and it will grow. And the same is true of fertilizer. Yes, some of the real nice plants we can grow, they need root tabs, they need liquid fertilizer, they need CO2. Java moss just needs a bit of fish poop and it will grow. You don't need to add anything special to make your Java moss grow. I wish I had footage of the breeding tubs we used when we bred shrimp. We had 5-gallon tubs and they were essentially 50% water, 50% Java moss. The moss just swells to fill the space. We didn't add any fertilizer, we didn't have root tabs in there, we didn't add liquid fertilizer to a shrimp breeding tank. It just grew from the waste created by the aquarium inhabitants. Now, another reason I love Java moss so much is it doesn't really require any maintenance. Now, I've got some fast-growing stem plant up here, and the name escapes me, but I'll put it on the screen below. I practically have to trim that thing on a daily basis. It's a damn weed, it grows so fast. With the Java moss, if you've got too much, you can literally put your hand in, rip a clump out, and either put that in another tank, give it to a buddy. If you're producing enough, you can sell it, or you just chuck it in the compost pile where it will break down. Yes, if you've got a high-end aquascape, you can trim it. If you've built one of these beautiful aquascapes where you've created trees from wood and Java moss, then in that situation, yes, you're gonna have to trim it regularly. That's nowhere near my skill set. I grow it as a clump, and when it gets too much, I rip it out, put it in another tank, give it to a buddy, whatever it might be. One of the many benefits of Java moss is it's so easy to maintain. Once it's up and running, you really don't have to do anything to it, apart from occasionally thin it out, because it will fill the entire tank if you let it. I frequently get asked, will the fish eat the Java moss? In my experience, I don't keep any fish that eat Java moss. Even my fancy goldfish don't really eat the Java moss. With that said, if you were to keep something like tinfoil barbs or Buenos Aires tetras or African cichlids that really enjoy eating greenery, then the chances are, yes, they will eat it. Shrimp, they don't eat the moss, but they love to eat the biofilm that develops on the moss. If you keep Java moss with your cherry shrimp, you will find they're constantly pecking at it, picking at it, and on first glance it appears they're eating the moss, but they're not. They're eating the biolife, the microscopic crustaceans, the bacteria that grows on the moss. The shrimp eat that. Java moss provides a banquet hall for shrimp. They're constantly on it, pecking at it, eating whatever develops. The starts of algae, they're pecking at it. Java moss and shrimp go together like, I don't know what. There is no better combination in my experience. One thing that can happen is you can get hair algae developing in your Java moss. And I get quite a few messages of people say, how do I get it out? How do I treat it? What do I do? I've had it a couple of times, and I'll be honest with you, in reality, I take the clump of Java moss that has the hair algae in it, I rip out all of the hair algae and all of the effective parts, leaving me with Java moss without any hair algae, put that in my tank, compost that, leave it be. It will grow back. I've never felt the need to try and treat the algae. I just rip it out, the moss will be fine. Again, if you've got a high-end aquascape, the chances are that's not going to work for you. But I would also say, if you're a high-end aquascape, you've probably got your own techniques for dealing with hair algae and such like. So yes, algae can grow in the Java moss, but I don't tend to worry about it, to be fair. I leave it be. In my experience, Java moss is one of the easiest to grow, the most useful plants that any fish or shrimp keeper or breeder can have. It's so versatile. It works for breeding tanks, quarantine tanks, shrimp tanks, aquascapes, whatever it might be. There's always a place for Java moss. It's probably one of the secrets to my success as when I was a shrimp breeder commercially. And if you're a shrimp keeper and you want to know other secrets to a good, successful shrimp tank, why not watch this video next? Thanks for watching.